my friends, and thank you so much for coming to spend part of your Thursday, September 5th with me. Today's 2024, and it feels like I haven't seen you in so long, but I just saw you on Monday, but it feels like so long. Oh, thank you, Melly. We love you at Vinny's. Vinny was ranting last night, and I love you, period. Period, Melly, period, full stop. Vinny was ranting last night, and I was traveling. And I was in a hotel and I saw him go live at like after 11 p.m. I'm like, oh, thank God, Vinny's here to keep me company. And he was ranting about the Georgia 14-year-old who shot up the school, and it's horrifying. And I just got an alert that the Wall Street Journal is reporting that his father is being brought up on charges too. So this is like another crumbly, and it's horrifying. And his aunt gave an interview to the New York Post and said, we've been screaming for years. He's been screaming for help for years, and it's horrifying. And I'm horrified by those cases, as you know. And I don't want to get sidetracked on that because I heard that there's like football going on tonight or something. There's a lot of people that might not be here tonight because there's football. Mark, I'm going to bring Mark on. Mark, did you know that there's football on tonight?
I did, but it's the Patriots stink, which is a new thing in the last few years. So I don't care. I can watch it with a little side glance and it's okay.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like I don't want you guys to miss anything. So I'm going to play this for you guys because I don't want you guys to feel like you're missing anything. Okay. So thanks to a Swiftie who posted this. I want you all to be able to see it so you won't feel like you're missing a thing. Here we go. There she is, everybody.
Hello. How are you guys?
Taylor's looking fierce tonight with thigh-high red leather boots walking into the game. See, I take care of you guys. I didn't want you guys to miss a thing. So a shout out to the Swift Society who posted that video on X. I don't know how they get all these videos of her. Somebody must be following her wherever she goes. And so that's what we're missing. But look, we have 1,200 people here already. So, yay us. I guess we're doing something right. I feel like I haven't seen you in so long.
Yeah. How you been?
I don't know. You were traveling. We're like ships that pass in the night. You were traveling, then I was traveling. And then, I've seen you on all these other panel shows, and I feel like you just don't get to talk enough.
That's not what they told me in my house. But I went away for 2 weeks and it was nice, end of year vacation, end of summer vacation. A lot happened, but this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I was gone, but we're back, re-energized, recharged, back to the grind. As you know, Labor Day is kind of like the beginning of the legal season, if you will.
I know.
So, we're back.
Everything's back in session because, judges like to take time off in the summertime. So not a lot goes on. A lot of counties don't even call jurors in. Like the end of August, it's like, forget it. We're not even calling anybody in. Everybody go home.
Summer trials are bad.
Yeah. I saw you were you in the Bronx?
Yeah. Finished up a post-conviction hearing today that's been going on for months and months. Today was the last witness finally. Wow. And, now we have to brief it, get a decision, and see where it goes from there. But, a lot of those trips to the Bronx are very interesting. And, there's the Sidebar Cafe right next to the courthouse, which
very funny.
I'm sure people who follow this stuff get a chuckle out of.
I know. I don't want to really out you here, but this is like our little version of, celebrities. They're just like us, that they used to do in People magazine. And I want everyone out there to know Mark Bederow takes the subway. I couldn't believe it when you told me you're on the subway. I'm like, first of all, how are you getting service?
Oh, yeah.
Second of all, look, I'm a subway girl too, or I used to be.
Oh, yeah.
It's getting a little more, I feel like it's a little more dangerous than it used to be. But
A train to Columbus Circle to the D train to Yankee Stadium.
When I used to go to Bronx Supreme back in the day when I was a very young lawyer, like 50 years ago, I used to drive and I would, there was a guy, he was like, you had to pay him a VIG and you could park your car in front of the courthouse and it was like $20 or $10 or whatever. And he would make sure your car didn't get stolen. So it was worth it to me to not have to take the subway and to be able to park right there. Yeah. I knew that he would watch my car and it would be great. Because for those of you who don't know, Bronx Supreme Court, which is our lowest court in New York, is right next to Yankee Stadium.
It's right there. Bonfire of the Vanities courthouse too, for those who are so literary inclined. But I don't go up there that often. I try not to. But you go where they send you.
if you're a plaintiff's lawyer, it's the best place to be. So I would always try to get into the Bronx because cases are worth a lot of money. So we haven't even been together since the civil suit dropped.
Right.
And we have not been together, obviously, since the arrest on Sandra Birchmore, which was just, I don't even know what day it is anymore. It feels like it was just a week ago.
Yeah.
And now we have this whole 2020 episode coming out tomorrow. But what I thought was so interesting is that yesterday, I'm going to play this so we can watch it together and then we'll talk about it, is this was national news yesterday and it was on ABC. And I thought this was really interesting. So I want to watch it with you. It's also like their little promo for the 2020 piece that they're going to show tomorrow night. But let's take a look at this together because this is now making like real national news after all of a sudden the arrest on Birchmore. People are starting to put the pieces together that Massachusetts might not be the greatest place to be if you get killed. Let's put it that way. Let's take a look at this.
Profile murder cases in Massachusetts are raising questions about the relationship between police and county prosecutors. A former Stoughton police detective is accused of killing a pregnant woman and staging her death to look like a suicide. This after a judge declared a mistrial of Karen Reed's case. Reed was accused of killing her Boston police officer boyfriend, but
I just want to say I love that dress that Karen's wearing. I just want to say that is my favorite outfit of hers. Okay, enough of the shallow comments. Oh, look, Will DeGlaire is here. Hi, Will.
said she was being framed. Now, both cases are in the spotlight as experts say there may have been possible missteps in these investigations. I want to bring in our legal contributor, Brian Buckmeyer, to help unpack this a little bit. Brian, they're not just talking about missteps in this case and in this case, but links here between the two. What is it about these two cases that are raising so many questions?
So first and foremost, it's coming from the same area of Massachusetts. And in fact, even some of the officers in both cases, there are connections that there are similarities between the two. And if you look at it even conservatively, at the very least, it's police misconduct. If you're looking at Detective Proctor sending inflammatory and inappropriate text messages in the middle of investigation about the defendant in the case, or the very worst, you're looking at the former officer Farwell, who's accused of raping a minor and then murdering her to cover it up, all of which was not found out some years afterwards. Or if you're looking at the Karen Reed case, there's a potential cover-up.
How are they going to explain, especially with a federal investigation now underlying this, how are they going to explain how the local investigators missed things that federal investigators are now picking up on?
That's a great question. And that's at the heart of this issue here, because this is a case where
it's a big problem because they had everything. I did a show by myself the other night because you were away and I was alone, and they had everything from the beginning. That's what we need to talk about that. Despite the fact that Guarino said that he couldn't find 32,000 text messages, they had Sandra's laptop the day of her death and they were all in there.
You're looking specifically at the federal investigation when it comes to the second case that involves the rape of the 23-year-old girl that but raped when she was much younger. At first, you have the autopsy that said it was suicide, but you see a specific bone in her throat that's usually associated with strangulation and not with suicide. How do they miss that? How do they miss the text messages? How do they miss the grooming for almost 8 years of a minor? And how do they miss her diary entries about her being raped by this officer? How do they miss all of that? And in 3 years, get an indictment. Now, it's also very peculiar for the feds to charge someone for murder. That's typically a state charge. So even now, where's the state with charges?
And a lot of the conversation is about the relationship between prosecutors and police. What is that relationship supposed to look like, and how does that compare to the picture being painted here?
So in Massachusetts, the way that it works is a detective is assigned to a specific district attorney's office. And so you will see that they have a very close relationship. But a prosecutor is supposed to be the check and balance to that of the officer, that the officers go and investigate a case, they arrest people, they collect evidence, and they provide it to the prosecution. The prosecution is supposed to make sure that the civil liberties of individuals are not being run over. They're supposed to check that if law enforcement are the actual perpetrator of crimes, that they're getting prosecuted. But because that relationship can be so intertwined, it's often overlooked, or they're just saying, you know what, this is what the officers told me. I believe it at full length. I'm not going to inquire. I'm not going to push back. Even if there's contradicting evidence, I won't ask about it. That's a problem that not only Massachusetts has, but I myself, as a public defender here in New York for about 9 years and even practicing in private practice, see a lot from prosecutors. That relationship is so tight that prosecutors aren't the check and balance. They're just, hey, buddy, we worked together for so long. I trust you. I'm not going to look over your work. And lo and behold, you have cases like this.
So how could this doubt impact these prosecutions, both of Snowden and Reed in her new trial. And how do you see this playing out? Do you think this could become a bigger issue?
Absolutely. As a defense attorney, oftentimes you attack the evidence. The evidence isn't complete enough in order to find that my client is guilty or not. The other option, as we've seen in many high-profile cases, you can look at OJ and the like, of if the investigation is bad, then the result, therefore, must be bad as well. And when you have a police department that a community, especially when that community is encompassing the jurors, don't trust how the police are operating, then cases, even if the person is guilty or innocent, can often fall apart.
All right. This is an interesting one to follow, Brian. Thanks for staying on top of it for us.
My pleasure.
And a programming note for you this week on 2020, we will profile the Karen Reed case. 2020 airs Friday, 9 Eastern, 8 Central on ABC News and later on Hulu.
So that's kind of big. A little promo but mainstream media, like Will said, finally covering it fairly. Will says the ABC is part of our cult now. Beware. We did it, Will. We did it, Will.
Their promo for the show is interesting. That little 2-minute trailer.
I know. I just don't know if I can play it or if they'll strike it. Should I try and play it?
No, you shouldn't do anything that might hurt what you're doing.
They might strike it because it's like their IP and they, I mean it's going to be, but I think everyone has seen it. So at least we can talk about it. Right. Because what a lot of people are saying and what somebody just said in the comments is like, look, I'm sure, first of all, do we know if Karen participated in this 2020 thing?
He gave an interview.
And it was, but the clip that I saw is her in the same dress that she was wearing in that old interview that we've already seen. So are they just using that for the promo or?
No, there's a fresh interview and in part of their tease, there are some questions and answers or things of that nature that are definitely new. The promo itself is, let's just call it what it is. It's not good.
Right.
Which is, not that rare either. These things are usually played down the middle for both sides. You don't have editorial control over these kinds of things. I've done 2020 multiple times before, and you have to be real certain, and it's a long process. They wine and dine you, and if you're lucky, you have a case where 2020, 48 Hours, and Nightline are all trying, and 60 Minutes and others are all trying to get you, and then you eat a lot of steak and drink a lot of wine, on their dime as they sit there and pitch you for these stories, and you try to make a decision as to who's going to portray you in the best light. But there's a lot of wheeling and dealing. What are the rules? Are they going to be allowed to interview the client? If so, is the lawyer there? Are you trying to restrict the topics or not? And, certain, depending on what show it is, they may be more or less likely or willing to kind of play with you, so to speak, like 60 Minutes, for example, which is, the gold standard of this kind of thing. They do it their way. And if you don't do it, they don't air it, right? It's 60 Minutes.
Right.
So I guess we'll have to wait and see. But if you look at the promo, not surprisingly, there's a ton of the focus on the human element of John O'Keefe and the loss that his family and friends suffered. And that's fine. That has nothing to do with Karen Reed, especially. But the ominous music, the questions without the answers. And then what I thought to be the most disturbing part of it was 10 or 15 seconds of a 2-minute clip, which is pretty rarefied space, right? You don't want to, you get an hour-long show. What do you get? About 40 minutes of actual content. And you're teasing it
42 minutes.
Right. And
with commercials.
Right. And you're teasing it in this little promo, and you dedicate 10 to 15 seconds of following her around on how she decides to get dressed and how to make sure she looks presentable for court and how to tailor outfits and things like that. And that's going to be a trigger for a lot of the people who have this irrational hatred of her. And they're going to go down the line that this is like, they're treating this like a Hollywood production. They're not treating this seriously.
Oh, they're triggered.
Yeah, they're triggered. But also, you almost wonder, is some of that also sexist? I don't think,
it is.
If I was, choosing a tie to wear for court anybody would care, which is fine. I don't think you should. But to talk about, the defendant and how she tailors her outfit and this and that as part of their teaser, those kind of things make me a little concerned, to be honest.
And she could have given 10 hours of interview. And, when you have no control over the final edit, things are taken out of context. Clips are taken out of order. There are answers to questions without the question being stated before the answer. So it's totally out of context. And look, I would always tell my client, as I'm sure that you would, you have to dress the part. When you come to court, you have to dress a certain way. And I think that's what she was trying to say. But, everyone's going to twist it. Like, what? She has a tailor? Okay. People who know, sleeves shouldn't be too long, but it's already being twisted.
Right. I mean, the big issue is the fact, she's speaking, without a net, so to speak. And, there is an open case pending, and these statements absolutely can be used against you if there's reason to. Now, I'm not suggesting there will be any reason to, that sort of thing, but they can use it. They can attempt to get the raw footage, as you said. 90% of it ends up on the cutting room floor. Do they play it fairly? Also, you run the risk of, at a trial, defendants usually won't testify unless there's a real serious reason to do that. And, you don't let outside forces control your decision in that process, but you do expose yourself to you're willing to talk to the media, but not the jury. And, why is that? So, look, I've had it when I've had clients go on these kinds of things. Usually it's not an open case. I had a client go on it during a post-conviction big hearing in Brooklyn. And, we actually restricted the ground rules as to what the topics to be interviewed were. I have no idea whether that's in play here or not. I've had other situations where we've been invited to go on, but they were pending cases. And, with Rule 3.6 and all of that, depending on what judge you're dealing with in other situations, it's just not wise to do it, or it's not going to help the client. So it's risky. There's no way to put it any other way. There is risk involved, and, they did it. They obviously thought it out, and you'll see how it comes out. But I don't know that what you gain as weighed against the risk. The public support is there. It'll probably be more after this, but there may also be more people who are vocal anti. That's just the nature of what this case is for some reason. So, and also, I don't know how up to date this production is. If how it is, how these people, they're always editing last minute, but they must have had a heart attack last week when they found out about the Farwell arrest. Because if I'm the producer of this show and I find out that the same DA, is accused of misconduct or looking the other way and with the same cops in the same town and I'm getting that in the story. And I just don't know whether, how hot to trot these producers are to change that or not, or how much of this even gets portrayed. We'll just have to wait and see. But it is risky. There's no way around that.
Based on that piece alone that we just saw, I think if that was my piece and I was the editor or the producer, I would be getting that footage in of Farwell as well. So based on the coverage of that piece that we just saw, that was a 4-minute piece. And that was on nationwide worldwide ABC. That was on like ABC streaming. It indicates to me that they may change their edit based on current events, and that would be a good thing.
Yeah, I think it also would be a fair and honest thing. And more importantly, look, how these people work. They want the ratings. They want it to be interesting. And this, the allegations are interesting because there's an alleged cover up and there's corruption and all that. Well, if you throw fuel on the fire in the form of the horrific Sandra Birchmore stuff, how do you not add that in? That is just kerosene fuel for this, for all of that. So just as a producer, I think you would want that.
Yeah, well, you can see that they put in, the counter protesters who really didn't start showing up until when, like deliberations. I mean, I can't even remember at what part of the trial they started showing up, but it was at the very, very end, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I did see the promo, and they did show, I mean, I know this is crazy. They say the pink shirts and the blue shirts. I mean, this
Right,
is,
right.
it's crazy, but yeah, no, they've only shown up for the last month or two or whatever. They definitely come in smaller numbers, and that's not being biased. That's just looking and knowing how to count and saying, well, that's 50 people on that side and that's 10 over there. So it is what it is. Sorry if
And who knows who they interviewed over there, right? And if they interviewed Karen before the trial, because I'm assuming that's when this interview was done. It had to have done before the trial started, right? I don't think she would give an interview during the course of the trial or post-trial, because we probably would have heard about it.
I don't know what the rules of engagement were. I mean, when you do this with an open case, if you do it, certainly you're going to say, we want this to air after. And then what happens? The trial's over, but it's not over. I mean, nobody could have foreseen at the time,
right,
that this was going to end up in this ridiculous scenario of, possible acquittal or not. But either way, the case continues. And so just everything about this is just all screwed up. And here we are. But, I'm sure the ratings are going to be off the chart, except for anyone who has DirecTV Stream, like me, because at the moment, we have no ABC or ESPN or anything. So
or Disney. Yeah, you guys got cut off in the middle of the US Open and like right before the USC game started, and they didn't resolve that contract yet?
Not yet.
Well, I mean, how better to get the public's attention than cutting off the stream exactly when they did. That is crazy.
Right before a big college football game last weekend, and people went nuts. And a week later, they still haven't. But you also, you mentioned something else about like you don't know who they spoke to.
Mhm.
That will also be very telling. I mean, clearly they're going to want to talk to people who not only can talk about the memory of John O'Keefe and what a wonderful person he was, which by all accounts is true, but they're also going to look to find people. That's how they do it. We need people who think she's guilty. So the producers get their college age interns and researchers to like find me people, which is fine. I mean, they ought to do it both sides for the public who's watching this. But if it turns out that the people that they're interviewing are coming from the island of the misfit toys, as I call them, that's not exactly a good representation either. And that'll be very interesting to see what types of lunatic factor do we have here in terms of, I mean, if they're smart, if they're smart, they would find like a legal analyst who just says, look, in my view, there's credible evidence. I don't know where they're going to find someone to say
like that guy that they just had on ABC that we just watched. He was good.
Yeah.
Get him.
He's very good, except he's probably going to tell you this case stinks. I mean, look, I think most honest brokers who have law degrees who look at this recognize this case is a loser. But there's got to be reasonable people somewhere that they can find who can at least add to the production and not have it go off the rails, on a one-way ticket to Crazy Town, which is, it always feels like it is.
It's like Candyland.
Right.
The people that I saw in the promo were, it looks like one of John's old girlfriends. And then there were like 4 or 5 women sitting on a couch who I recognized from seeing inside the courtroom, sitting with the O'Keefes during the trial, but none of them testified. So, family, friends. I mean, that's at least what they're showing in the promo. I'm not quite sure who those women were, but Aiden, this is a good point. Every memory of John O'Keefe consists of generic, he was a salt of the earth guy comments and references to him drinking. They never talk about his childhood or who John really was. And that's so true.
Yeah. I mean, look,
in depth,
and I don't know why that is, but I also know how they put these shows together, and they're going to have a good solid 15 minutes or more about John O'Keefe, the person, whether it's this generic cliche, fun guy to hang out with, as opposed to the details that maybe people would want to see. But you're going to see 15 minutes of filler time just about him and the people who miss him. And it's, we want to see justice and this and that, but I don't know if there's only 15 or 20 minutes left in the show. Presumably the interview with Karen would be pretty I mean, that should be the lead. Hopefully, from the viewer's perspective, it's more substantive. I'm not sure from an uninvolved defense lawyer. I don't know if you want the client talking about, what happened and this and that, but I wouldn't want it being talked about wardrobe choices either. I just find that's poking, prodding, and trying to get a response, out of the lunatic fringe who just can't stand her anyway. And that's, what do you need that for? We have that.
I feel like anything she says is going to be twisted. Anything she says is going to be twisted. Like there was one thing that she said in that, whatever that first interview was, the Dateline, it was a Dateline, Nightline, I don't know. But she said something about, I thought that maybe that John in his drunkenness might have whatever. And a lot of people were attacking her for saying like, you were calling drunkenness, blah, 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 was he calling him a drunk? His blood alcohol content at autopsy was 0.28. Okay. He was over more than 3 times over the legal limit. So
Look,
let's just call it what it is. The guy was freaking hammered. Okay.
Right.
So
facts are facts. He was
right.
drunk. There's no dispute about that. But, you can't win when you're the defendant, and you're going to get criticized. And that's why, there is a school of thought that says you say nothing. I mean, anything she says is going to be scrutinized. They're going to, oh my God, look at her body language. They're going to like freeze the picture where you're half blinking and then, say you look evil.
Right.
Last week, as you know, they had this incredible round of public support that was
the standouts
heard of. I mean, the amount of support, and she showed up, which is great if you're doing that kind of thing. I don't know why that offends people. She's presumed innocent, has declared her innocence, and wants to show up for the people that have been showing up for her. I mean, that's called normal human behavior.
Right. It's great. It's being grateful.
But she made some comments, compared it to protesters from the Vietnam War. And the next thing you know, everyone's, pearl clutching and freaking out over, is that the best comparison to make? No. Is it offensive? Right. No. Does it really matter? No. But the Daily Mail had a Daily Mail dealt with them a lot too. They, whatever, they are what they are, and they love kind of case.
Yeah, I mean, the National Enquirer had its place,
But they write a story about where, the headline is about this comment, but the story actually wasn't that bad. But, they bury the lead and whatever. But the pull to get you in was this like really tone deaf statement about comparing, people supporting her to those who protested the Vietnam War. And you're just thinking like, all right, that's a little much. It's not that big a deal, is the point.
Right. I think she was just comparing the people to people who fight the good fight. It was like more, it wasn't about her, that comment. It was about people. They believe in a cause. Like, you guys aren't going to quit, But like, again, a lot of people in the chat are saying like, why would her attorneys allow her to do this interview? And I'm going to toss that over to you. It's no softball, but here you go.
Look, first of all, none of us know what their private conversations are and what they decided to do. But, to be fair to the question, it's a good question. I don't know, to be honest with you, because there is risk. And no matter how intelligent, well-spoken your client is, and she clearly is, anytime they talk, it can be used against you. And of course, when she talks, it's always being recorded, because this case is pretty much the biggest criminal case in the country for all intents and purposes right now. And, anything she says is going to be documented in some type. So why allow it? I don't know, to be honest with you, because I don't know in the big picture either what there is to gain. You have a lot of public support. A lot of people know about it. Is it worth it to get more attention when there's already a lot of attention, under the risk of, saying something that's not helpful? It can be used against you, which I'm not suggesting she would do, by the way. I don't think she's going to say anything that's going to harm her criminally. It's just going to be rocket fuel for the people who can't, who don't like her, to clip on the internet and do all that. But it is risky. There's no sugarcoating the answer to that question. There's clearly risk. You are on the wire without a net. And, based on the clips that we saw, it appears that she's sitting there without lawyers.
Right.
Again, it's a better look, when you're, you don't want to be surrounded by lawyers. Oh, cut it off. On the other hand, if you really don't want to stop it anyway, that looks terrible. They're not going to stop filming if you interject. But look, they have confidence in their client. I'm not sure that's a great answer, but they obviously believe in her the same way she believes in them. I don't think at the end of the day, when this is over, it's going to harm her, most likely, in terms of the criminal case. But, the odds of this being harmful are not zero.
Correct. Would they pay? Christine wants to know, would they pay for an interview like this? Maybe she needs it. I've never been paid for any interviews that I've done on.
Some do, some don't. I don't.
Like
I don't think ABC News is paying you. Again, I don't know what any arrangements are. I can tell you point blank, and having spoken to some of these people, some of them in their sales pitch, like 60 Minutes, will tell you right away, like, we don't do anything like that. And if 60 Minutes usually enters the bidding, they win just because they're 60 Minutes. But this is not a 60 Minutes kind of story, at least yet. This is really that three-headed competition that you see with 48 Hours, 2020, and NBC Dateline. They generally, and they'll go to the trial. They will have hundreds of hours of footage, whether it's from the public proceedings, outside the courthouse, meetings with the lawyers, meeting with her, possibly the prosecutors. It'll be very interesting to see what, if any, statement they release in connection with this.
Right.
They probably, almost certainly, will not go on camera. They probably will issue a written statement that'll be read at the very end. And because we're fair here, right? You can't criticize the Norfolk DA. You heard that right. You can't criticize the Norfolk DA if they issue a statement about this, if they were asked for comment after they were told that, there was going to be this show and the defense was talking. I mean, you're allowed to respond. I'm sure it would be a very generic response, but that's a very different situation, I think, than that ludicrous press conference, the hostage video you saw from Michael Marcy, last summer, a year ago. So it's a different situation.
Yeah, the clip looks bad, but if that's the worst thing that they've got, that's a good thing, right? I mean, we'll have to see what the final edit shows, but I would find it hard to believe that they wouldn't put some of the Sandra Birchmore stuff in there. I mean, because that's the story, right?
You're right.
Because in my opinion, all right, you go on and then I'll say my opinion.
I was just going to say, I mean, we don't know how good or bad it is other than to say this. She's pretty smart. Okay. She's pretty tough. You've met her, you spoke to her. You've watched, you've seen the abuse that she's taken online, outside the courthouse, in the courthouse, listening to Michael Proctor and all these other people. Yeah. She's pretty tough, pretty smart. And I would think that the conversation, while some may criticize it for being tone deaf or, why are you celebrating or looking happy and that kind of stuff, substantively, in terms of like, is this seriously going to harm her defense? I would be pretty surprised if she did anything that was damaging, but you just don't know until you see it.
Except if it were me, and I know that she probably really wants to tell her story, right?
Oh,
she's not a person like me. Like, I always want to have something. I always have something to say. I'm always going to stick up for myself and for people who can't stick up for themselves. And I'm always going to speak out about it. And I think about her and, and how strong she is. And she probably wants to do that so badly. And it's so hard for her to sit there and take this day after day after day that she finally maybe just wanted to say something, because people are like, oh, well, if she's innocent, she would just be saying she was innocent. She, why isn't she saying she's innocent? And any lawyer will tell their client not to speak. Maybe there were guidelines around the interview. Maybe there were, maybe the questions were given out in advance and they had to be approved. Like, there's a lot of ways that it could have been done, right?
You can barter with these people and attempt to make your own rules, attempt to get as much editorial control as you can get, but ultimately you're not going to get it. And if you're not comfortable, then, sometimes these things don't go anywhere. This one went all in. I mean, they spent, it looks like, a lot of time together. they had to go to Boston to do it, which costs more. When I did these in New York, you just go to ABC Studios, like the national studios where they're pre-made to conduct these interviews and everything. Here, they have to send everyone on the road. It's a much more costly production for what this was than, perhaps what it would be just handling some kind of, New York City craziness. So,
well, remember before 2020, not 2020 the show, but 2020 the year, when somebody wanted to interview me or you, they would either say, come into CNN, like it's in Columbus Circle. I mean, that's where the studios are. You can walk right by and watch things being filmed. You would go in and you would go in studio. They would do your hair and makeup and you would sit down and it would be live. Or when I was handling the church cases, they would send the camera crew to my office, and we would either do our interview outside or do it in my conference room or do it somewhere convenient for me. They would come to me. Now, since post 2020, everything is like Zoom, Skype. It's like we've grown accustomed to this really crappy quality of interviewing that I think needs to go away. I think it's terrible.
It's very different. I mean, I've had them come to my office. I've had them come to my home before. I've had them, if I'm out of town, send someone out there, or could even go to the studio. I mean, I've done stuff on Fox News for their, Fox and Friends morning show, and like they'll send you a car service at like 4 a.m. if you're doing that.
They would send a car.
So,
but it's like we've grown accustomed to crappy quality, and I think that we should all protest that too. That's my next thing we should protest. But we got a lot going on here. So people are saying 2020 is 2 hours. So what did they say tomorrow at 9?
So
9 to 11,
2 hours. They got the full window. They got the
9
whole
to 11. Yep, 84 minutes from Adam Ross.
That's a lot, and you'll see sometimes like one of the ones I did. Because there are updates, we ended up getting 2 full shows. We did one in, I don't know, either 17 or 18, and then things happened. So you did another one like a year later. With this one, this is never going to be the end of it. I mean, obviously, when this case is over and if there's any fallout with corruption and that sort of thing, this story is nowhere near. I mean, what's that famous Churchill quote? It's not the beginning, it's not the end, but maybe it's the end of the beginning. That's what it feels like. It just feels like there's so much more to go here, and you're just so much more, and this thing is airing at a time when this story is still undetermined, and you're waiting for so many other things to drop as it relates to the DA, the state police, the outcome case, the whole Birchmore thing. Other cases that are tangentially involved. I mean, all kinds of things.
This is an studio wants to know the answer to this, and I was going to bring this up, so thanks for reminding me. If Lally wants to use her interview at trial, do they have to use the original full tape, or can they use the aired broadcast? These interviews are always chopped and edited, sometimes heavily. This is a great question, because in all of the pretrial motions that we did, because I did all the pretrial in this case, and the motions in lemonade, as the closed captions called the motions in lemonade, the Commonwealth made a motion to get all of the unedited footage from that, and now I can't remember, Dayline, Nightline interview. They wanted, and they got like Gretchen Voss's notes. I mean, they got all kinds of stuff, and they didn't use any of it during the trial, which I found so interesting, because if they got all the raw footage and they couldn't find anything damaging to her in there, what do you think about that?
Well, I think obviously if they didn't use anything, that tells you there's probably nothing to use, because it's not like this DA's office is bashful and throwing anything in the kitchen sink at a trial to make what ought to be a 3-week trial 3 months. So, but they're going to do it again. They're going to try to subpoena everything they can. There may be journalists who are maybe a little less cooperative about asserting privileges and this and that. Of course, they're going to air a lot of this, so a lot of that is waived. And I would think you're going to see a legal battle on getting anything and everything. And they're going to try to get all the raw footage, not just of the interview, but is there other footage of them just talking that didn't air? Not even for the interview, but tell us what happened. We want that. It could be a prior statement, this and that, and they're going to try to get it.
Yeah. Back to so now let's pivot a little bit, because the whole Sandra Birchmore thing that you and I have not even had an opportunity to discuss, and how, in my opinion, Karen Reed's case is going to completely benefit from everything that just happened with Farwell being arrested and all of the similar players involved. And, where do we go from here? Because this Sandra Birchmore case, and I don't know how much you've read about it, but I did a whole deep dive. I did all the Canton PD reports. I did all of the my most recent show was all the MSP reports, there's internal affairs investigations on these guys, Farwell, Devine, and brother Farwell, twin brother. All three of them were grooming Sandra Birchmore. The Norfolk County DA's office had all of this information from the date her body was found. February 4th of 2021 is when Sandra Birchmore's body was found. And right away, they seized her laptop. They had access to it right away. Guarino is the one who extracted everything. And when I went back the other day, we watched some of his testimony, Guarino's testimony from the Karen Reed case. And he said, during his testimony, that he got the extraction of John O'Keefe's phone and he uploaded it into the server for the district attorney's office.
Right.
Apparently that's their policy and procedure, right? Is MSP, first of all, let's talk about this whole thing about having troopers assigned to a DA's office.
It's incestuous and stupid, and it needs to change. And obviously, I mean, look, they should have a new DA at some point in Norfolk County, but you can't have this system where you have these state troopers who are encamped in the DA's office like it's a fraternity house rather than a professional operation between detectives and prosecutors. They all donate money to Morrissey, which makes it even worse. They're all friendly, and where are the checks and balances? I mean, the guys are all, but I mean, look at the text messages. Who are they going to? They're going to these people.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
They're not going to guard each other. They're not going to, say we shouldn't be doing this. Did anybody tell Proctor in real time, for example, stop what you're doing? No. I mean, it just continued to happen until he got caught. So the whole arrangement itself is terrible. And it's the same cast of characters in case after case after case. And you'd think of nothing else when the Karen Reed and Birchmore cases are over, that they need to take a long, hard look at just breaking up this arrangement. And, the word we've always used is fumigate the building. It's just, it needs it.
Is this the only DA's office where that's done? Phoebe Mick wants to know. I never heard of that before. Is it a Massachusetts thing?
I think it's a Massachusetts thing, and I don't know why they do it like that. Look, I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's. I mean, I say it's smaller. It's not that small. We're going by New York standards.
Right.
Look, where in New York, you have the NYPD. You have every precinct has a detective squad. That's the way it is. That's who handles it. Every district attorney's office has their own detective squad too, but they're not to this level. They kind of assist. They're not the actual lead investigators. In California, the LAPD is a huge operation, but they have the LA sheriff is, I think, an even bigger police agency out there. I don't think they do it that way either. Why they do it in Massachusetts, where it's the state police and each county has its own little encamped detectives, I don't know, but it's too small a group of prosecutors and cops. Clearly in Norfolk County, it became too much of a locker room, too friendly, and perhaps worse, too corrupt.
Agreed. So if their policy and procedure is to upload the extractions of these phones right into the DA's server, to me, that's it, because you were a DA, right? An ADA or a prosecutor, a DA, right? You worked for the DA's office in New York. If you had access to all of that stuff, all these phone extractions during an ongoing investigation, when you had the opportunity to look at that stuff, so they had all of these text messages going all the way back to the date of her death. I don't understand what happened.
Well, I mean, look, according to what I read, Farwell admitted, the one thing he admitted was, I deleted my communications with her, which of course is incriminating and troubling in and of itself. Okay. But you take his phone and you attempt to extract it. We've been down this road before with the Celebrite stuff. And if you know nothing else from the Karen Reed case, if you didn't know how phone extractions work, you can get deleted information. We certainly know that. Guarino, if you recall, missed all the Jennifer McCabe stuff in that case. He somehow screwed up the infotainment device in her Lexus, which arguably could have exculpated her or whatever, depending on anything. And yet he became the key witness to talk about the health data and the steps and the up and down the stairs that couldn't have been, he was that witness. So he certainly is important. But the question is, well, why couldn't he extract them from the phone? That's a problem. And then the next question becomes, were they in the cloud? What steps did you take to get into a cloud account? What steps did you take to get consent to search the phone? And then the part that I really don't understand is, if they're just not equipped to do it, if you believe this, I'm not sure many people believe it, as opposed to this, they didn't want, who knows? But why not go to a different agency who's better equipped? Like, I don't know, the FBI, because they found it.
But my point is, they had Sandra's laptop. And so because she had a Mac, all of her iMessages forever were on that laptop. So they had the 32,000 messages between them on her laptop. So they knew that he was lying immediately. And there were so many things on there that went to his violent propensities and his penchant for choking her, and, admissions that he had taken her virginity when she was 15. I mean, it was all right there. So for Michael Marcy to come out in September of 2022 and say the investigation to that point, quote, did not produce evidence of criminality in her death. How can we ever look at him seriously or take him seriously? I mean, if it wasn't for the feds stepping in, Farwell would still be out there.
They're going to start. I mean, it's like a Baghdad Bob thing. Remember that guy who would just say everything's fine, and the fire behind them, the whole world is ending. I mean, yeah, it's hard. How do you accept what you're being told by the lead law enforcement official in the county when they miss all these messages, they miss all these other things? Then you just look at the investigation itself. You could spend 4 hours talking just about the cell phone stuff and how disturbing that is, but when they go interview Matthew Farwell, they know he's married. They know he has a kid. They know that his kid was born literally within like hours of Sandra Birchmore's death. They know that he was in the apartment shortly before that. They know that he's the father or alleged father of the unborn child. They know that he is of an age much older than her, that at the time that there was a relationship with her, that it was clearly illegal. In other words, they know that they need to investigate this seriously, that whether they want to believe initially it's a suicide or not, they ought to be taking this as a very serious, formal, we're not your friend, we're not your buddy. You come into the office, the cameras are going to be rolling. There's going to be 4 detectives sitting here taking notes. There ought to have been a lawyer from the DA's office it's a real formal, serious process. And instead, what you had was Fanning go to a parking lot of a school
to interview Matt.
Matt. And then just kind of, nothing's really happening here. That, she did have sex with all these other people, apparently, including
they put that in there.
Evidence of anything. So, we're done here. And then, you ignore a lot of the other common sense evidence, which I think, again, it's understandable when they show up on the scene and they see her positioned in the way that she was described. I think it's human nature, at least, to say, wow, why would she do that to herself? How horrible is that? But again, that when you learn that she's pregnant with a married cop's kid, you have to scrutinize the married cop. He's got a real possible motive to make her not have a baby. And you look around, and then you find out little things like the laundry.
Yep.
Because people who are going to kill themselves by hanging on a doorknob don't do the laundry. They don't order DoorDash. They don't say how happy they are looking forward to having a child and doing.
They make arrangements for their pets.
They do.
She had cats wandering around.
Everything should have at least led them to have been skeptical that would be a suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's so many similarities to the Karen Reed thing. It's chilling. Then you get into the medical thing. And everybody knows, unfortunately, having been involved in strangulations and murders and that sort of thing, that when you look at autopsy reports or hear testimony from medical examiners and things of that nature, that the classic symptoms of strangulation, I'm talking like by hands or just a deliberate, the hyoid,
right.
Just gets
same
fractured.
thing with Shannon Gilbert. Yep.
And then your eyes get the reddish, that
Petechial hemorrhaging.
And the medical examiner here just missed completely something that's obvious. And then you have the feds once again, just like they did in Karen Reed, having to do the same thing, which is bring in their own expert. In essence, their private medical examiner was the ARCA of this case. They couldn't rely on what the medical examiner did. They bring in a private guy who says this has all the indicia of strangulation in a homicide. Here we are again with the manner of death and cause of death. So this thing is so awful, and it doesn't appear that there's any serious effort. It's just a whitewash. And the worst part is this guy is so sadistic. He's so sick that he rapes her for years. He treats her like garbage. He grooms her. He abuses her. He exploits her. He ultimately murders her, allegedly, including his unborn child. And then the only way I can phrase it is he basically frames Sandra for her own murder by having her appear to have committed suicide, which is just the ultimate insult to her and her family and friends. Because what a horrible thing to think that your loved God, why was she so upset? How could she do this? And by all accounts, she didn't do this.
There was a restraining order on her refrigerator. Did you know that? There was an active restraining order with a magnet on her refrigerator against some other guy. And it was part of like the evidence that was collected. And like it was like within 3 hours, they're like, it's a suicide.
If nothing else, and that guy, by all accounts, is almost certainly innocent in this.
Yeah.
But from the initial investigation, any serious cop would at least say, that's somebody we need to go speak to, and that let's keep an open mind about what this is. But the running joke is it's Chinatown. Forget it. It's just they swept it, and you're back to the whole incestuous culture in this area. Everyone's friendly with everyone. Everyone is from these same towns. They grew up. They never left. They live in these towns. These are their friends. It's Matt. I'm interviewing Matt. That's a formal report on a suspicious death investigation. And this guy Fanning, who's been a, detective in the state police for however many years, is filling out formal reports talking about Matt in the parking lot.
At least he didn't say after formal introductions. Matt and I sat in the front seat of my cruiser and did an interview. Let me just thank Melly. Thank Melly for gifting a membership, and thanks Joseph for gifting 5 memberships. And welcome to everyone who commented.
One guy, can't do the electronic data. The other one can't do an interview properly. And you start saying, does this sound familiar to like what happened in the other famous case in Canton?
Well, that's my point, is that what I'm trying to like segue into here is, I think, this is my opinion, I'm not gonna put words in your mouth. What we are just learning now that happened in the Sandra Birchmore case, doesn't that give Karen Reed's defense that much more legs? Why is it there are some, those crazy people that you talk about on Twitter that are all, justice for Sandra Birchmore. They did this is great. They're going to, how can you say that on the one hand and then at the other hand say, well, Karen Reed definitely hit John O'Keefe with her car. Like those two things cannot coexist, first of all. And John O'Keefe was not hit by a car.
because they have an agenda, and they're trying to, win their agenda, which is that Karen Reed is a murderer, and that's what they want to establish. And they're just not being intellectually honest. And if this triggers them, so be it. But if you seriously believe that what happened in the Sandra Birchmore arrest of Matthew Farwell is not helpful to the defense in the Karen Reed case, if you seriously think that, you are either lying to yourself or delusional for many reasons. The first of which is just Karen Reed is going to have a second jury, because she may be retried for murder, even though she's already been acquitted. She's going to have a jury of people who live in Michael Morrissey's jurisdiction, who already know, without even mentioning the word Sandra Birchmore, that she almost certainly was acquitted of some counts in the first trial. Mm-hmm. They've heard since that first trial ended that there was a federal investigation of some sort going on. And then they also know that, Proctor is in trouble, Buchanan is in trouble, Tully is in trouble, even Kevin Albert, who's involved in the Birchmore thing too. A lot of bad things are happening, so to speak. Mm-hmm. All these terrible things are happening. And then lo and behold, now a police officer has been indicted by the feds for murdering an innocent girl in that same jurisdiction, investigated by the, wait for it, Canton Police, Mass State Police, and Norfolk DA, and they did nothing. So before you even get to the evidentiary impact, just the psychological impact, the base knowledge of the jurors coming in, who thinks that this is a good jurisdiction where like the lawyer was talking on the clip we watched. Mm-hmm. There is a crisis of confidence in anyone who lives in that jurisdiction. So the DA is in 1,000 times worse position than they were even at the end of the first Karen Reed trial. And the Birchmore thing just makes it all that much worse. If that's not bad enough, I would think that in and of itself would be, I don't know, kind of a bad thing for them.
You would think.
Then you just start getting to the witnesses. I mean, again, they come from the state police, but you get to Guarino. He is, as it turns out, a very important witness in the Karen Reed case. I mean, he is the one who missed the Jennifer McCabe information. Mm-hmm. The defense in that case is alleging that was this is all part of a cover-up. Good luck keeping this jury from knowing that that's the same guy who missed 32,000 some odd messages in the Birchmore thing. Yeah. He's also the guy who said that when, I was analyzing all of this data, that John O'Keefe could not have been in the basement, could not have happened. Okay. Now, trust me.
He could have been waving his phone around or going down a hill.
In essence, the DA is saying, trust us because Guarino says so. But, right. Never mind the man behind the curtain who couldn't find 32,000 messages and all that. Yeah. He's also the guy who said that he could not have gone up and down stairs because, he might have been holding his phone going over a small hill or doing those kinds of things. But, because he says so, trust him, but don't worry about the rest. So it's just another state trooper to add to this list of, on the one hand, possible incompetence at a high level, or if you want to take a more dastardly view, another example of why did he just happen to miss all that Jennifer McCabe data? Why did he just happen to miss or drop the infotainment box or whatever came out of the car, which could have completely exculpated her? Don't you think the defense argument is going to have a hell of a lot more oomph to it when they say, look at this guy, look at the state police, look at these guys. This is a frame job. So it of course it affects the Karen Reed case. And when they try to lecture you, some of these people, they're like the ombudsman of the internet, right? They tell you this is what you're allowed to think mm-hmm. and not think. And they get angry and try to tell you that this case has nothing to do with the other case. It has everything to do with it. It's the same DA that didn't prosecute. It's the same state police who didn't investigate. It's the same Canton police who didn't know what they were doing. And the public looks at them and says, you guys are incompetent, but here come the feds. They're doing something right. And some of these people are the same witnesses involved in the Karen Reed case who did not find things which could have helped her. And if you're going to tell me that one has nothing to do with the other, I'm going to tell you you're wrong. It has everything to do with it. Not literally.
How can they? Yeah. I mean, like, how often do feds bring? I mean, they had to backdoor these charges in to get him charged. You know, like they had to make it about killing a witness. Like, this doesn't happen.
No.
Tell everyone how often this happens.
It doesn't. And I mean, to charge it as a 1512 murder of a witness in a federal case. Let's be honest. They had a dig. Okay. I mean, that's not the most obvious charge. I mean, they can't just charge. There is no federal murder. There has to be related to other federal offenses and in the course of federal crimes and all that. And the fact that they felt compelled to do this and basically say that, will prove that Sandra Birchmore had evidence that could have made her a witness to a federal, criminal civil rights case against these people for violating her rights and these other things. That's not normally how murder is prosecuted. But the problem here is if the feds didn't do it, then, Matthew Farwell would be driving his truck, collecting his paycheck and looking around and saying, honey, what's for dinner tonight? Like everything was fine. So they had to do it because the Massachusetts district attorney in Norfolk County couldn't and wouldn't. And when they try to tell you, they thanked the state police in their press conference, that's politics. That's diplomat. That's just that's nothing. Okay.
Yep.
The fact of the matter is the prosecution is in federal court, not state court, when this really is a classic murder case. Assuming, the feds are adding the extra element that they have to prove of a witness in a federal case. That's harder. It's a harder case, but they want the big boys to do it because they don't trust the state people to do it. And if you see what's going on in the Karen Reed case and you saw what was going on in the investigation when Sandra Birchmore died, it's pretty easy to understand why.
Here's the quote from Marcy. Marcy's office said Wednesday, I guess that was last week, after Farwell was indicted on federal charges of killing her and staging it to look like a suicide, that the investigation into the death of Birchmore has remained open and active, adding that we look forward to supporting and assisting federal authorities as they pursue this prosecution. And then it says, in fall of 2023, Marcy handed the Birchmore investigation to Attorney General Andrea Campbell. Fall of 2023, after the flurry of his crazy paranoid letters to Josh Levy. What are you investigating? We have a Brady obligation. We've got to turn over. We know that you've been subpoenaing people to the grand jury. We know. Suspicious timing, isn't it?
It's real suspicious timing. And the reality is you didn't do anything. I mean, your lead investigator is interviewing Matt in a parking lot and nobody's really, they did look at some data. You're right. They looked at her laptop. They did get data. They ignored all this other stuff that was readily apparent in the house. They didn't take the extra steps to get into Farwell's devices. They could have gone to the FBI, said, we need help. Okay. We can't get in. I had a case 5 years ago, real high profile case, awful 3-defendant murder witness tampering case. And the lead defendant in that case, he was something else. He was the son of a prominent jeweler who in his father's apartment building killed some kid who came down from Connecticut, and then they just did a horrible thing. They drove him to New Jersey and they threw him in a pit and burned him, and a horrible case. They were so desperate to get into this guy's iPhone. They couldn't get in. The Manhattan DA, and by the way, the Manhattan DA has their own lab, and they have a good one.
All the resources.
But you know what they did? They go to the FBI and say, help. Like, Apple won't help. Unless you're like a terrorist, Apple's not helping you get into like
right.
But they go, they get the help from the feds, whatever, and eventually it takes forever. They get in. Is there anything to suggest here that the, Massachusetts State Police at least tried to go to the next level? Because one thing is the FBI did get in to his phone. And when the when the Norfolk DA issued a press release, whenever they did way back when, saying there's no evidence of criminality, if they had looked at his phone, they would have seen a cornucopia of evidence of criminality ranging from 10 years past of just horrifying things.
But they didn't even have to look at his phone because they had her laptop. So they had all the same information. So when I went through all this stuff the other night, I was like, the feds didn't have any new information. The feds had all the same information that Marcy and his office had from the MSP all along. Because in the federal indictment, and I read the motion for whatever that motion is, and that's where all this information is with the affidavit. I guess it's the motion to detain him still or keep him.
Yeah, there was a detention memo, search warrant, all that stuff.
All the evidence that they name and talk about in there is all the same stuff that MSP seized. It was her journals. It was all stuff that they had access to from jump. I didn't see anything different. And that's what shook me to my core. I'm like, so how are we supposed to believe that this is not a cover up and this is not corrupt? And if it was a cover up almost exactly a year to the day before John O'Keefe was killed, how is it not a cover up a year later when all the same players are involved? And how is it that they announce, internal affairs investigations into Buchanan and Tully and Fanning, and then all of a sudden they take it back? Oh, Fanning's good. He's good. Do you remember that?
I do. The day that all came out, and I think they declared him unfounded, which is kind of a hold your nose. We're not making a ruling, but there's no proof, but we're not blessing you with a clean bill of health. But, they still have the other three under investigation. And in all fairness, I don't know that. And I mean, Birchmore better than I do. I know the indictment and what came out recently, but I didn't see anything referring to Buchanan and Tully being involved.
No, but Fanning was in charge of the entire Birchmore investigation. Right. He was the top. He signed off on everything. In fact, he said, Guarino extracted the laptop and the phones, and I analyzed the data. Like, he took credit for analyzing everything. Well, I mean,
you're asking the difficult questions that I'm sure the federal prosecutors will want to ask somebody, whoever's willing to tell them. And certainly indicting a guy who, at least in theory, is eligible for the death penalty, which is never going to happen. Right. That's certainly one way to grab people's attention, to say, we're here and we're open for business, and tick, tick.
Bang, bang.
Yeah, right.
What do you think them hiring a Jersey guy to be the new head of the Massachusetts State Police? What do you think is going on there?
I don't know. I mean, I think he's retired, so he's coming out of retirement. Not a young guy, at least based on the picture that we saw. My understanding is that the colonel, he was an interim hire anyway, so it's not as shocking. I mean, the timing is interesting for sure, but I don't think it's necessarily, oh my God, they fired the colonel. I mean, he was never going to be, I think, the guy. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. But if he's going to have some input, at least on the law enforcement side, like the prosecution side of the detectives and whatnot, one would hope that he would take a look at what, Norfolk County as a case study about what happens when you put these guys that are all, barstool buddies together and think it's funny to talk about, looking for nudes and doing this kind of stuff, and just going out and hanging out with Matt in the parking lot, and, letting evidence reveal itself that shows up after every couple of weeks.
Oh yeah. The way it just the crime scenes talk to them.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, what a disaster. I mean, what an embarrassment, at least the Norfolk part of the state police has become.
I mean, at least at the very least, it's not even a good example, but at least Birchmore, looked like maybe it could have been a suicide. I mean, the John O'Keefe never looked like it could have been a car accident. The injuries were just never from a car accident. So it's even harder to believe. What do you think about a special prosecutor ever being assigned to the Karen Reed case? Is that ever, somebody said, what do you think about that? What are the odds of that?
0. I mean, look, the jury hung on at least one count. So that means there are members of the first jury who, at least for whatever reason, which people like you and me don't necessarily understand, we're willing to say that we believe beyond a reasonable doubt that she might have done something, that's political cover to say there's nothing to be done here that involves removing a prosecutor. It's a reasonable case, if you will. I don't believe it is. But so, I mean, they're not going to remove the district attorney unless something happens. Now, the political fallout from Birchmore, are there more indictments? Is the DA under investigation? You know, I mean, there's all kinds of other outside forces which could ultimately lead to a sort of special prosecutor. But at least at the moment, I don't know why the governor would do that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's rumblings too that Fanning was in charge of the jury, which I find so hard to believe.
I don't know
And
anything. I've heard that. I'm not comfortable on that one just because I don't know if that's true.
I don't know either.
But if it is, if he was, that's disgraceful. And that's, I mean, if that were really true, that would be an example of just everything that's wrong in that county. I mean, he is from the Norfolk DA homicide group that investigated the case, that supervises the other detectives, Buchanan, Tully, and former or soon to be former Trooper Proctor. And you have somebody with them watching jurors. Again, don't know that it's true, but if it is, that's terrible.
I mean, it just seems kind of ironic about the jurors that were chosen as alternates and the one that was dismissed in the end there. Thank you, John, for gifting 5 memberships. John Duncan, appreciate you so much. And Lori for your super sticker. And on the Up and Up asks, based on what you have experienced in your law practice, what would the wife be doing right now? Would his attorneys encourage her to support
Farwell's wife?
him? I guess Farwell's wife.
Farwell's wife interviewing divorce lawyers.
I would hope so, wouldn't you?
I mean, look, and I don't know what she knew, didn't know. I don't know if she has the aggressive, Proctor's wife where, F all of you and he's a great guy and let's rally the troops to petition the governor. I mean, how absurd does that all sound now?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have anything good or bad to say about her, but her life as she knows it is gone. I mean, her husband is going to be in federal prison for the rest of his life if he's convicted, which is a high likelihood, but he gets his process. Even if he flaps his gums, it only goes so far. They're not going to excuse you for, killing an innocent girl that you tortured and raped for 10 years and then staged a suicide and just say, thanks for the information. Here's a Metro card and $50. Have a nice day. They're not going to do that with him. So, he's finished. He's never going to earn another cent. And then I think also the sad part is you start thinking about your kids and that how can I, for the benefit of my kids who are going to have to deal with this on a level that's just unfathomable, how do you stay with him just for the abuse that's going to lead, the verbal abuse, the teasing for your kid? And then I think the other thing that they're going to have to come to terms with is, as sick as this is, he willingly also ended the possible life of a sibling, a step sibling. I mean, there are so many angles of just awful that you go, you leave, you change your name back to your maiden name and move on. I mean,
I think his wife is a lawyer. I think she's a lawyer.
Well, then she knows perhaps more than others about what she needs to do. But, I mean, certainly, I guess it would be natural instinct initially to say, I support him and this can't be true. But I'm sure when her friends let her know that, just so you know, that the feds allege that the first thing he did after murdering this poor girl and staging his suicide and murdering his own unborn child was rush to your hospital bedside to hold his newborn baby. And if that doesn't do it for her, then probably nothing will.
Crunchy Frog says, sometimes police have to interview in the car or wherever. You don't always have perfect circumstances. And then, Free Karen Reed 2024, thanks for the 5, says, come on, meeting in the parking lot is just 2 men being silly, playing grab ass and sharing a White Claw.
Let's go back to the first comment.
Yeah, that's what I wanted you to address.
Yeah, there are times, extenuating circumstances, where interviews need to be done right away, or just you get someone when you can. But let's be very clear. Matthew Farwell in this investigation as a police officer, okay, right? The guy was a police officer.
Yeah.
No, the answer is you're coming in, bring your union attorney or whatever you want, and we're doing this by the book formal. This is not a friendly, it doesn't have to be hostile, but this is not hanging out with Matt in the parking lot. I'm sorry. That is,
it shouldn't be
perfect circumstances, but this was not something where the guy's a police officer. Okay. He knows how this works. You're coming in, we need to speak to you, and you do it and bring your phone and do this. And of course, whatever he says, we know he lied about the timing of the messages that he deleted and all the other stuff about his relationship. They did not need to interview him in the car. The guy was a police officer. Come on.
His interview was 5 paragraphs long and was shorter than any of the witnesses who called into the DA's office with information. It was shameful. Justice for All, thanks for the 5. Is Judge Bev going to allow any of the Birchmore screw-ups to be mentioned in Karen's retrial?
Well, this is where it gets trickier, because this time you can't keep a lot of this out. I mean, take Guarino, for instance. The defense absolutely has a good faith basis to confront Guarino at this. I mean, it's been reported. It's in the federal case. This is not exactly a secret. It's not a fishing expedition. And even though it has not yet been resolved, their whole theory is that he screwed up the data interpretation and analysis in this big case, which is controversial, and it inured to the benefit of a police officer, in this case, the Alberts, those people. And we believe we have a credible basis to say that he did the exact same thing in this case. Or alternatively, he's incompetent. And we have another case where he did the exact same thing and screwed it up and is incompetent. How are you keeping that out? You're allowed to impeach a witness. And at this point, the defense will fight like hell on this point to get this in. She can't keep out stuff just because, it hasn't been determined yet. And it's the kind of thing where Guarino couldn't deny it. You would make them take the answer. They're not going to let you, use extrinsic evidence to prove it or anything and turn it into a mini trial. But I don't know how they wouldn't be able to confront him with this, assuming he's even capable and willing to testify, because you'd have to think that IAB and the feds and whatever are at a minimum asking themselves, why did this guy apparently miss all this? And maybe there's no story there, but they're going to look into that.
Yeah, I'm thinking they are. And if he was saying "kill me now" on the stand last time, what's he going to be saying this time? Dreamer Thinker, thanks for the 20. When there is one cockroach, there is never just one cockroach. Corruption multiplies.
Yeah.
Laura wants to know if Merrick Garland is going to need to comment next.
No.
Adam Ross says that oh, go ahead.
No, just gonna say it's a horrible murder type case in a U.S. attorney's office. It's not that like the attorney general of the U.S. has to comment on everything. However, it is Merrick Garland who ultimately, in theory, would be the one to say yay or nay on the death penalty. But you can be sure that I'm sure the recommendations are going to go up, and they have a committee, and they have to give the defense an opportunity to make a presentation. And it's a whole process before they're allowed to formally seek the death penalty and then try to get the attorney general to do it. They have done it in Massachusetts, by the way. They did it with the marathon bombers, obviously, or
right.
the one, and that's stuck in litigation over whether his jury was messed up. But I don't think, as awful as this is, that they're going to seek the death penalty for this guy.
Usually isn't it reserved for most like terrorism and type cases, mass casualty events, killings? Yeah. Trooper Reno broke the infotainment center on Karen's SUV because he didn't know how to access the data.
Well, but that, again, then the stuff that he allegedly screwed up in the Birchmore case ought to come in, and they ought to be able to argue this could have exculpated her. And then the defense has every right to argue that he did this on purpose because he didn't want her to have the evidence to clear herself. And that may be the case, it may not be the case, but the defense is allowed to argue that, notwithstanding in the civil lawsuit that, they want to sue everyone for arguing that this was a cover-up for causing emotional distress, which is, that claim is ridiculous, obviously.
We didn't even talk about the civil suit.
No,
Yeah,
no,
that's ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous.
If plaintiff in that case had their way, they would put handcuffs on Karen Reed's ability to even argue this kind of stuff because of the potential emotional never mind the fact she may be innocent.
Mhm.
What more can you say about that? But obviously this stuff that Guarino allegedly did in Birchmore would be relevant to whether he was qualified to do the work that he claims he did in Karen Reed, or if it's more nefarious, that too. Either way, his credibility is fair game.
Yeah, and the integrity of the investigation, and how many other defendants are sitting in jail right now saying, "Oh, Guarino testified at my trial too. I need a new trial now because that guy doesn't know what he's doing." Clearly,
that's always relevant. By the way, I mean, if there is a good faith basis to attack the integrity of the investigation, that's always relevant.
and that's why Proctor's messages came in, and he was able to say, "Oh, but yeah, it was unprofessional of me, but it didn't affect the integrity of the investigation." He was scripted so very well.
You're not being fair. It was his personal phone. So
you're right. They never should have been able to access his personal phone.
Right.
Siobhan says, what are the chances of the brother and Divine getting charged too? I am hoping. Well, yeah, we'll see. Divine became a lawyer. They were all like allowed to retire, keep their pensions and just move along. It was kind of like, how about you guys just retire, resign, take your stuff and go.
I'm
Get out of the
guessing
sandbox.
This is informed speculation, so take it for what it's worth, because I don't know the weeds of this case.
Mm-hmm.
But these other kind of cops that are, involved, but kind of on the fringes, I would think that they're most exposed for process crimes, obstruction, 1001, lying during the investigation, that kind of stuff. I mean,
right.
I don't know whether there's any evidence that they literally helped conspire to murder a witness and that kind of thing. But certainly if they lied, a year and a half ago in a federal investigation, that they absolutely could be charged with that kind of stuff. If they help destroy evidence and help delete messages and things like that, they could be subject to prosecution for that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, and also there's evidence already that William Farwell, the twin, lied about the last time he saw her, the last time he had sex with her. His statement was full of lies. That was all.
Was that to the state people?
That was.
Because if he did that to the feds, then he's screwed. I mean, that's.
Yeah, I don't know what he said to the feds because they haven't revealed any of that stuff yet.
Well,
Well,
here's
that was all MSP stuff.
I mean, if there are the possibility of charging other people in state court, I mean, forget Matthew Farwell. Double jeopardy, you can't state court. He's already charged in federal court. It's complicated. But if you want to have an integrity test for the Norfolk DA, and all these people lied and covered up and obstructed and hindered prosecution and tampered with evidence, here's your chance. Go get them.
Mm-hmm. How many other victims are there out there of these, monsters from the Explorers program? I mean,
oh, God.
Hopefully, if there's anybody else out there, they'll speak up and.
It's so awful. These kids go there.
Pile on.
They go there to learn life skills and responsibility, not to get raped, abused, and murdered. My God.
And that's exactly what these predators, the kind of things that they want to involve themselves in, because it gives them easy access to children, and they're in positions of power. So win-win.
Yeah.
Disgusting. On the up and up, thoughts on the ME from Sandra's case?
It's a problem. Never mind. Oh, I'll say this if you want me to. I mean, she biffed on one of the most basic medical things, we think. I mean, again, anyone with some experience knows that, a full hyoid is generally strangulation or choking of
or a full body hanging where your entire body weight, right? Not a seated hanging.
No, not with your head off to the side, not to get all graphic, but because you're not, all your weight is not yanking on your neck. I mean, that we're not doctors, but that appears to be a huge and obvious miss. And now you start getting into, well, they're kind of an arm of the state police and what happened here. And then you start thinking about all the crazy stuff that you learn that, Buchanan and Proctor and others were doing about, pushing the ME to change the, and you're awful, you're like a rookie because you couldn't get her to do it or whatever it was. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Clear, but this goes back to the larger point when, a lot of these truth deniers say, oh, this case has nothing to do with it. This is another example. The public knows this, and they're going to say, well, wait a minute. How does this relate? Again, the medical examiner in both cases is just not being clear with stuff that looks like it should be a little clearer.
Yeah. Thanks, On Top. Any other victims, please come forward. You're protected. Some guy with cancer is going to sue Lally for the emotional distress of having to listen to him drone on. Thank you for the 5. Gringo wants to know, what is the timetable for Karen Reed to appeal Bev's denial of the motion to dismiss? Does it affect starting date of retrial? They have 30 days, I guess, to file a notice of appeal, and then they got to perfect it. I don't know what the rules in Massachusetts
I don't know
are.
the rules either, but they're going to do it soon, and it'll get determined. I think the judge shipped it all the way out to late January, specifically under the assumption that this would be over. And of course, if it's not for whatever reason, then the trial date gets moved. I mean, look, she's not in jail, so that makes the pressure a little less.
Yeah.
Someone's incarcerated, you can't just adjourn cases 6 months for trial, that kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. This whole civil suit, it just blew my mind to see this. We didn't have a chance to talk about this, but I've talked to a lot of claims adjusters, like BI claims adjuster. I'm a civil litigator. That's what I do. That's what I did for 30 years. There's no claims adjuster in Massachusetts that's going to pay out on this case. They're not just going to throw money at them to settle the case. They're just not. There's no evidence of a car accident. There's no injuries that match up with a car accident. And the fact that they now sued the bars also puts them all on the same side. So now what's going to happen in the retrial is everyone from the Waterfall and CF McCarthy is going to come in and say, she wasn't drunk at all.
Which
in
is
fact,
what one of them did.
Shots that Yuri's math teacher, who made his name because Yuri counted 9 drinks, and we saw, like, who knows what was in a shot glass. That bartender may just come in and say, that was all water. She told me she didn't want to drink, and if I ordered shots, just to pour water in shots for me.
Saw at the trial, putting aside the extrapolated BAC results, which of course are all premised on what Proctor says is the time for the last drink, which I would suggest to you, take that whole test and throw it out if you're relying upon Proctor to tell you anything other than the day of the week, as long as you look at your calendar first to corroborate what he's telling you. So put that aside. The other evidence at the trial was contrary to what the civil complaint says, which was that she was visibly intoxicated in the
Nobody
bar.
said that.
In fact, not only did nobody say that, but the problem for the plaintiffs is that the people who said the contrary are named, I don't know, Brian Albert, Jennifer McCabe, Brian Higgins, those kinds of people.
Matt McCabe.
You have the problem of Buchanan's math. You have the proverbial clear liquid. What the hell does that mean? Could be water, could be vodka, but I don't know. You also have the receipt, which is a very small amount. It's
2 Tito's and a beer.
Well, that's problem, right? And then you have the other point, which is to what you just said. The bar is assuming they're not going to just throw checks like you just said to just say go away. Their interest at that point is going to be totally aligned with Karen Reed's in that she wasn't drunk.
Yep.
And, I mean, so they have every incentive to say, let's take discovery. Let's do this. Let's depose. Let's do whatever.
The subpoenas would be flying right. If I was the defense attorney, first thing I'm doing is I'm going to third party in Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, and Colin Albert. So now they're third party defendants. They're not going to have insurance companies to defend them. They are going to have to pay out of pocket for a defense.
Why would,
that's not going to be cheap.
By the plaintiff's own theory, if everyone is responsible for allowing this drunken, crazy lady to just get lubed up in the bar and then take the keys and drive over this man, then where was Jennifer McCabe, Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, Colin Albert, all these people? Well, not Colin, he wasn't at the bar, but why not just say, oh my God, you can't do this. This is a disaster. The other thing is the complaint itself. I mean, if you read it.
Oh, I did.
It looks like it was written a couple of months before the trial started.
Right.
I mean, it
Right.
wasn't.
It's like they were just holding on to it, waiting to file
Right.
it.
But you might want to do a, final edit that actually flows with the evidence, because when you say that she was visibly intoxicated in the bar, that is literally contrary to every single witness who testified in the trial.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean she didn't drink, but she clearly was not visibly intoxicated. I mean, nobody said that.
They got to say that to prove a dram shop case, right? That's what they got to
Yeah.
say. Got to say certain things, and they're going to say them. But here's the other problem with this case, this civil case, is the statute of limitations for wrongful death in Massachusetts is 3 years. In New York, it's 2. So they did not have to file this case until, and they should not have filed this case, in my opinion, as a plaintiff's lawyer, until January 27th of 2025, the day before the statute expired. Because what's going to happen now is these third-party complaints are going to be filed immediately. Now, Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, and maybe Colin Albert are going to have to hire defense attorneys. Now, this is going to put a strain on the relationship, to say the least, by all of these Justice for JJ people and the OKeefe family. I have questions about whether Mr. OKeefe knows that he's even a plaintiff in this lawsuit, because we didn't see him in court for a long time towards the end of the trial. And there's no intentional acts pled in that complaint at all. So if I got Paul OKeefe on the stand, the first thing I would say to him in the criminal trials, you don't really think Karen did this on purpose, do you? Because he gave interviews on TV. We watched him, that he says that we knew that she did this on purpose right away when she came back to the house. But, you filed this complaint against her in civil court, and it says here that you thought she hit him by accident.
No.
You don't say anywhere in here that you thought she did it intentionally. So how are we prosecuting a murder case?
I mean, it's almost, I guess he's the executor, so he has to be the one that brings some of this. But the optics of, given his recent legal drunk driving thing too, makes it, I mean, not that it's evidence in the case, but all of this just seems so ill-conceived. And if they think that this is somehow going to break her down, it's just a few more dollars she's going to have to raise. And
no, she gets, her defense is going to be paid for free. Her carrier is going to cover it. She doesn't have to pay a dime for her defense. That's the beauty of it. And they can hire they got accident reconstructionists on retainer. They got guys to go out and inspect that vehicle on retainer. This is what they do. They don't want to pay.
Well, there you go. Then you may get the benefit of even more archetype experts, maybe not of the scientific variety, but
they know how to do it. They got these guys on retainer.
They're not trooper calls, is what you're saying. But this doesn't sound like it was very thought out. It feels more about like getting one over on her and needling. It doesn't make any sense. And anything that's going to help her, obviously not be provably intoxicated, is going to destroy the one count that, practically speaking, is left standing against her anyway. So
Crazy. It's crazy town.
Doesn't
see if there's any questions before, because I know you do want to go and watch football. Look, Chicago can't get enough of you, Bederow. Thanks, Mary. DJ Nashville, thanks for becoming a member. Coelho Zippers, thanks for becoming a member. Phoebe, thanks for coming in with the Grateful Dead quote. I put that up earlier. Dewey, thanks for your super chats. Thank you, Danielle, for gifting a membership. KPT says Fanning drove the jury bus and said the visually upset juror was talking about the case in a public place. Oh, that's what got the juror thrown off. Do we have confirmation that he drove the juror bus? Because I really don't know, so I can't really.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I can't. You read all these stories, you hear all these things. I can't keep it straight. I don't know.
I mean, there seems to be some like yearbook photos floating around out there about how all these guys all went to high school together, like with the dates of their graduations and everything, and then yearbook photos, and it's just very incestuous. It's like everyone's related, everyone knows everyone. I think the statistics on the Canton PD is like a very high percentage, 80% born and raised Canton on Canton PD.
Yeah,
it's insane.
It's weird. I mean, it's a strange place.
It's the land of the upside down.
I said house. It's like, Hawkins, Massachusetts, right? It's just it is totally upside down.
That is right. All right. Well, we got anything else you want to talk about?
I'm fine. The game's 13-7 Kansas City. So the Taylors, it's going to be halftime anyway. So, if you have
do they keep showing Taylor on the screen there? You watching?
I don't know. I haven't been watching. That's getting like old. That was funny at first, but I don't know if they still do that literally every time. Usually, if Kelsey scores a touchdown, they definitely do.
Oh, they'll go to the box and they'll do
For
it. Yeah,
sure.
Kelly said, good to have the band back together. That's so funny because that is the exact same thing that I was thinking when we were talking to it. I'm like, we got to get the band back together. We haven't done a show in so long.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know if there's any other things that we can touch on here. I think we touched on everything that I had. So let's say you.
Nothing. I'm good. If there's no questions, we can call
Let's
it.
see.
Unless
Go
there's some
Chiefs. We got some Go Chiefs in here. Let's see. Diane Gallagher. Is it possible Paul's beginning to doubt the McAlberts and it will force the truth without the O'Keefes looking bad?
I don't know. I mean, it's
based on all of his interviews, he seems to think that that's the whole reason he had them come in for closings. Is he said, I wanted the jury to know that I don't think that they had anything to do with this.
Yeah, you want to be real careful about criticizing a brother of someone who was killed, but it does happen in cases. They do get, they get told a version, they want to believe it, and they just go with it. And even if it feels delusional, you do have to kind of give them a wide berth. But I mean, the lawsuit, the inviting them to the closing, some of the statements he made in the interview, it's a little cringe. But to me, the family members, I just kind of, they can say what they want. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I just think it was bad timing. I think they should have waited on it. If I was,
but I don't blame him for that. I mean, that he has legal counsel and
yeah.
I don't think he would decide when to do any of this.
Yeah, I don't see. Is there anything here you want to address? That's what you've been saying all along. Yeah, some people think that Paul had the damage on John's SUV repaired. I don't know if there's evidence of that, so I can't really speak on that.
That would be bombshell if that were true.
Yeah, 2020. Yeah, so 2020 is going to be happening tomorrow night. They're doing a whole episode on Karen Reed from 9 to 11 on ABC. Thank you, Emma. Thank you. I don't know. I'm tired. Do you have to take a vacation from your vacation?
Yeah, I need a vacation from it. But
from your vacation?
But the weather's been nice here, though, as you know. So that's
you know what I thought? Like the second
this
weather got
it's 9/11. Every September day.
That was the nicest day.
Still blue sky, no humidity. I know. Yep. I know what you mean.
Pierce says, can you comment on the state trooper working for the DA? How is it in most states?
I'm familiar with, not like that. Certainly not a unit encamped in the DA's office like that. But, it may work in some places, but they're only going to be as effective or credible as the individuals themselves. And, these guys are running around sending these text messages or laughing at them that you heard about in the trial, not investigating anything in the house, not investigating anything in Birchmore. I mean, so they're not good at this. So, but whether it means there aren't other good ones in other areas of the state, I don't know. But as far as we can go, just based on these cases, there's a problem in Norfolk County.
Yeah. What do we think Justice Canone is thinking? Canone.
I don't know.
Hope I don't get overturned. Hope I don't get reversed on appeal.
Well, it's funny you say that, because the one thing I said weeks ago that she's probably thinking was, why isn't this freaking DA's office stepping up and saying, Judge, we're going to make this moot. We're going to dismiss the murder case and take this decision out of her hands. And they put it on her, and she's definitely thinking, I hope to hell I don't get reversed. I don't want an appellate decision that says that I'm going to, put you down in history as one of the only judges who's ever said, let's, after the acquittal, say, let's do it again. Let's try again. I mean, that's not good if you're a judge to have green-lit a retrial on an acquittal. But,
Yeah. Well, so much for the Constitution in Massachusetts. Yeah. David Glare showed an interesting video of Chief Berkey's son driving a Canton police cruiser with a missing taillight housing in October of 2022.
Well, this goes to your point a few minutes ago. I mean, it's like the incestuous nepotism place. I mean, the chief's son is a cop running around in a car without a taillight. I mean, after the Karen Reed stuff. I mean, how stupid.
Yeah, that's
and
insane.
just what does that tell you? I mean, it's
maybe they're practicing. Comes the time when the blind man takes your hand, says, "Don't you see?" Thanks, Pilgrim Shadow, the 10 for the reminder of what a great song. Never in my mind to cause so much pain. Thank you, mods. You guys are amazing. Here's your Grateful Dead quote of the evening. Mark is so well spoken, says Wednesday Ophelia, and insightful.
Thank you.
Oh, what do we call Mark? Law Daddy? What do you have a nickname?
Oh God! And then last night, I met these guys. Have you met these guys? The Las Vegas cops.
No.
They're good. They're funny. They're like street guys from Vegas, but they're what you would expect instinctive street cops to do. And they have an opinion about, what happened in 34th Fairview Road, which you can probably imagine. And so some of the people started calling them cop daddies.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Cop daddies.
They were something else.
Look at all the daddies. I don't know what channel 2020 is for Aussies to watch. I do not know. Maybe it'll be on YouTube. I don't know. No idea. If anybody can help out, LB.
Well, ABC will put it online like right after. They'll put the link because they want the clicks and all that stuff.
All right. So you're Law Daddy and Marty is Justice Daddy. When will your fans be able to see you in Massachusetts? Any appearances scheduled in Massachusetts?
Well, we have some court appearances in was it third week of September? So the week after next, I believe. Show up and hang out in Dedham for a couple days.
All right. Well, that's nice. Hopefully you'll do some appearances, do some live shows, and we'll be able to catch you.
I mean, I don't expect it to be, full of fireworks or anything overly exciting in that regard. But, you gotta get into the action. So yeah, I'll be out there for that.
All right. Well, any final thoughts before we wrap? So everyone can go watch the second half of the football game. I think it's 13-10 at the halftime. At half.
13-10 Kansas City. No, just it'll be very interesting to see what happens tomorrow night with this interview. It is interesting. I mean, certainly whether you're nervous about it or you think it's going to be harmful, helpful, if nothing else, it's going to be interesting. I don't think it's going to be harmful. I really don't, in the sense of incriminating, but I think the polarization in the case, which is so awful now, is going to be that much worse after this airs, because everyone who is pro Karen Reed, if that's the thing, I hate the way it's like pro and con.
I know.
More pro. And I think a lot of the triggered, angry people are going to be even worse after this airs. I think they're just going to look at it and they're going to see the stuff about how dare you, tailor a suit for court, and how dare you get your hair done, and how dare you smile, how dare you do anything other than act like the guilty, miserable person you should look like. And anything short of that, I think you're going to see it's just going to get more polarizing.
Do you have any appearances scheduled for tomorrow after the 2020 episode?
No. As I said, I spent all day in the Bronx today. Tomorrow, what's tomorrow? Tomorrow I have conferences all day.
Tomorrow's Friday. Oh, yeah. Well, it's from 9 to 11, so that's late.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll recap it for everybody another day.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, let's hit the like button, you guys, because we have there's well over 4,000 people watching, and there's not even half as many likes. So if you would be so kind as to hit the like button on your way out, and thank you for coming to spend some time with us. We always love spending time with all of you, and you're all so classy and kind, and the mods are amazing. Thank you, mods. You work really, 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 really hard, and we really, really, really appreciate it. So as I always say, be cool, be kind, be classy. You guys, it's not hard. Just so not hard. I'm going to put something up for tomorrow. We're going to start doing a pretrial dive on Carly Gregg. If you don't know this story, it is shocking. It's about a 14-year-old who killed her mother and then laid in wait for her stepfather. And she's on trial as an adult in Mississippi. And it will shock you to the core. She is wearing a Catholic school outfit to all of her court appearances. Trial will be starting soon. So we're going to do deep dive on that tomorrow. And then next week, there's a hearing about whether or not they're going to transfer her to juvenile court. So that should be interesting, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you real soon. Good night, everybody.
Bye.